Afternoon. National Assembly for Wales is now in session, and the first item this afternoon are questions to the First Minister. And question one is Nick Ramsey.
Will the First Minister provide an update on the Welsh Government's spending priorities for improving the transport infrastructure?
Yes, we're publishing our National Transport Plan for consultation before the end of the year, and that will set out our priorities for improving transport infrastructure in Wales.
First Minister, you'll be well aware that there is increasing concern over the Welsh Government's M4 Black Route proposal, which includes bizarre plans to demotorway the current M4 and create a Welsh spaghetti junction on top of the village of Mega. Will you take advantage of the next 2 years before your planned building is to start, go back to the drawing board and do a meaningful consultation that includes the potential benefits of the new metro system and electrification and also includes the Blue Route option using the Southern Distributor Road and the Steelworks Road?
We have said, of course, that there will inevitably be an environmental assessment and no doubt a public inquiry, but members should not deceive themselves that the Blue Route is without controversy. It goes past many houses. There are no easy answers to this. What is important is that the consultation is as full as possible.
Griffiths.
Will the First Minister agree that one Welsh Government transport priority should be the establishment of the long-awaited Ebervale to Newport passenger rail link? Yes.
Well, as part of the phase 1 of the Metro programme, work is underway to deliver the further track capacity necessary to provide additional services to Newport. We expect that to be complete by the end of 2016. We expect then service patterns to be considered as part of the work to specify the next Wales and Borders franchise. So the railway line will be there, the network will be there. It's a question then of specifying the service pattern on top of that.
Brynaf Iorwerth.
Thank you very much, Presiding Officer. Does the First Minister understand the real concern that exists, the length and breadth of Wales, on the risks of putting so much capital investment into a single scheme? And I am talking about plans for the M4 here, of course, in South East Wales. People do realise that that's a problem that needs to be resolved. But what's your message to those people who are truly concerned that other important development schemes, the length and breadth of the country, will be forgotten or at least shelved because of your determination to go ahead with this proposal on the M4 without looking at the Blue Route in full? Well, there's no evidence of that. I'm constantly speaking about the improvements that have taken place on the A470, and the Bont Newydd bypass is also to be built. There is no getting away from the fact that this is a problem. It's not going to disappear. It's a problem that's going to remain unless it's resolved. But as I've said in the past, we are willing to ensure that there is plenty of consultation to ensure that the final decision is the decision that will resolve the problem in a sustainable way.
Harrod.
First Minister, thank you for your answer on the National Transport Plan. You'll be aware that in a written question, your Transport Minister announced yesterday that your government has dropped plans for a new railway station in Brackler in your own constituency. Can you tell us what other plans have quietly slipped off the radar in advance of the new National Transport Plan?
Well, there are problems with Brackler Station because it's so close to the existing Bridgend station. It's literally a few hundred yards down the road. Brackler is a community that is mainly on a hill, and the station, of course, is at the bottom of that hill. So there were always issues with regard to Brackler Station that caused concern to many. But nevertheless, of course, what I've seen over the years is the frequency of services improve from Bridgend Station to the point where it's now the 5th most used station in Wales. And it has, of course, a substantial car park as well to enable people to park there. So what certainly we have seen over the past 15 years in my constituency is a regular service every 20 minutes to Cardiff, regular services to Manchester, to London, to communities further west, and of course to Maesteg, with plans, of course, to improve the service to Maesteg, and of course the additional services to Barry. Those things have happened, of course, during the lifetime, most of them, of the Welsh Government.
Anne Jones.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. First Minister, we've seen some significant investment into the infrastructure on the rail in North Wales. The redoubling of the 7-mile stretch between Saltney Junction and Wrexham will now enable trains to travel at a faster speed, cut down the journey time, and hopefully make it more attractive for people wanting to use the rail network rather than using road. However, we do need to see some further investment in North Wales and to make sure that we can have better frequency and more journey times. As your government is now looking to consider its rail expenditure and will be starting talks on the new franchise, what projects do you as the First Minister think you will prioritise for North Wales, and what will you expect the outcomes for rail passengers to be?
Well, firstly, the improvement between Wrexham and Saltney Junction is important for service frequency and times. The improvement of the Halton Curve, which the UK government is paying for, will enable through services to run between Wrexham and Liverpool for the first time in many years. £10 million has been allocated, of course, as part of the budget agreement with the Liberal Democrats for a transport project in the north. That is something that is being taken forward now. And, of course, station improvements are important, and the member will be aware, of course, that we are undertaking station improvements at Rhyl to provide a station that the people of Rhyl can be proud of. And members will also be aware, of course, of the extensive modernisation of Llandudno, which was completed this year.
Question 2, Byron Davis.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Will the First Minister outline his vision for the future of the tourism industry in Wales, please?
Yes, it's to be found in our tourism strategy, Partnership for Growth 2013 to 2020.
Thank you, First Minister. At the beginning of this month, I tabled 2 written questions to the Minister for Economy, Science and Transport, asking very simply what recent discussions has the Minister had regarding a transatlantic flight from Cardiff, and will the Minister publish a strategy for securing a transatlantic flight from Cardiff Airport? Now, I should have received an answer by the 13th of November, and having checked today, nothing has been forthcoming. Given my role as a scrutiniser and the importance of transparency in government, can you explain the delay, or could you answer these 2 simple questions as to whether you have had, had any discussions regarding transatlantic flights to Cardiff Airport, and whether there is indeed a government strategy for securing transatlantic flights to Cardiff?
Well, first of all, there are other hubs in the world that would be a priority, Dubai being one of them, for example. If by a transatlantic flight we mean a flight to New York, I do not think that will be viable. Bristol tried this, it didn't work because, of course, New York doesn't have a hub airport, unlike other American cities, and it's important where people fly long haul that they're then able to access other airports from the hub airport that they've just flown into, in the same way as they do with Schiphol. Dubai acts in the same way, Frankfurt acts the same way in Germany. So we are looking at ways of enhancing the long haul offer from Cardiff, but it's probably right to say that we are looking in other directions at the moment rather than a straight flight to the eastern seaboard of the States.
Anne Jones.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. First Minister, will you agree with me that promoting our heritage can be a way of increasing tourism? And what can your government do to make sure that brown signs are placed in strategic places to enable people to come off the major routes?
I know the member is a strong advocate of a brown sign to St Asaph, and that is something that she has fought for. I can say that we will work with Denbighshire County Council to complete an application for brown tourism signs, and I hope then, of course, that St Asaph gets the visual recognition from the A55 that perhaps it deserves.
Simon Thomas.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. There is an opportunity, given the autumn statement from the Chancellor in Westminster, to hear something about the future of VAT on tourism businesses. The tourism industry has consistently asked for a cut in VAT in order to see a boost within Wales and indeed within the rest of Britain in terms of selling tourism internationally. Is that something that the First Minister would wish to see in the autumn statement, and is it something that he's requested?
Well, yes, it is something that I'd be very supportive of. Generally, value-added tax, of course, is not a totally equitable tax, bearing in mind that those earning the least have to pay the greatest proportion on their salaries. And so any reduction in VAT would be something that would be of benefit not only to tourism in Wales, but certainly to the businesses of Wales generally.
First Minister, tomorrow we've got the opportunity to discuss the merits of the Faith Tourism Action Plan in debate here in this chamber. Initiatives such as the Cistercian Way, as you'll be aware, have a real opportunity to boost tourism across Wales by joining key heritage sites such as Strata Florida and Abbey Cum Hir in Radnorshire. Would you please take this opportunity to update the chamber as to the progress of the working group that was set up by your Minister earlier in the year?
Well, that's something I'm sure that will be touched upon in the debate tomorrow. We should celebrate, of course, our faith heritage in Wales. The fact, of course, that at one time 2 pilgrimages to St David's were worth 1 to St Peter's. In my hometown of Bridgend, it was very much on a pilgrimage route as people came up Newcastle Hill, by St John's Hospice. Many of the pubs in Bridgend had religious names at one time, less so these days. But certainly it was a very popular pilgrimage route at that time, and it's certainly something that in Bridgend and in other parts of Wales, people are rediscovering, re-celebrating, and it's something that we would want to encourage.
We now move to questions from the party leaders. And first this afternoon, we have the Leader of the Opposition, Andrew Davis.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Last week, First Minister, we had some very good news on the electrification proposals going forward now that agreement has been reached between the UK Government and the Welsh Government. And I pay a special tribute to the Secretary of State, who has worked tirelessly on these, as he identified in his first couple of speeches that had been a particularly knotty issue that needed dealing with. The Welsh Government's financing of its part is predicated on obviously being able to get the fare income from the metro system to underwrite the investment, as I understand it. What modelling has the Welsh Government undertaken to show what type of fares might have to be levied on the metro system to pay back the finance? And is the income derived from the entire franchise, or will the fare increases just be related to the metro system across South Wales?
Well, first of all, the thing to remember is that the agreement with the UK Government is control of the franchise. The whole franchise will be given to the Welsh Government. That is an opportunity for us then to assess the fare structure for the whole of Wales. We very much welcome the fact that £230 million more is on the table than was the case in the summer. I think it is right to say that the change of tone in the Wales office has been helpful. I do not think this would ever have happened under the previous Secretary of State. And I welcome the fact that this deal was reached last week. We now have the opportunity, of course, to move forward now, and as I'm sure all do in the Chamber, to make sure that the metro is built and that we have the right type of franchise for Wales and the borders in the future.
Thank you for that answer, First Minister. My specific question was, what type of modelling has the Welsh Government undertaken to show the level of fares that might be demanded or paid for in the future once this development is completed? And I appreciate that obviously the whole franchise is now going to be devolved here to Cardiff Bay, as the Minister for Business and Enterprise touched on in questions last week on the Wednesday. But could you give me a specific answer, please, as to what type of fares the Welsh Government envisages being chargeable to repay the financing? Because I can't believe that you've gone into the negotiations and agreed your contribution of £250 million, as I understand it, without having some idea of the level of fares that you're going to be charging on these routes.
It depends not just on the level of fares, but on the number of passengers. And that's why, of course, it's not possible to give a price today, because, of course, we expect passenger numbers to rise. And as a result of that, we can then make an assessment further down the line as to what the fares would look like. What we do know from the modelling is that we would expect, given the projection of passenger numbers, that the cost to the Welsh Government will be cost neutral in the longer term, because the money we put in will be paid back.
One thing that the metro system has clearly identified is the importance of transport projects to help with regeneration and economic development in all communities. And whilst the metro system is very welcome, obviously the new funding of European structural funds, and in particular in West Wales, is going to be a vital plank to stimulate economic activity in those communities. Again, the government has come forward with a feasibility study for the dualling of the A40. Do you envisage that structural funds will be able to be used to dual the A40? Because, as I said, we fully understand the importance of good transport links that will enable areas of Wales to regenerate and create greater economic activity. And as the last two tranches of European money have failed in the original goals to lift economic activity, I think we need some clarity as to, do you propose to use those structural funds to dual the A40?
If those funds are available for that purpose, yes, of course, we will. The issue with transport and European structural funds is a difficult one, because there are some restrictions that are in place for use in transport projects. It is the intention, of course, to move ahead with the dualling of the A40. This is in response partially to what's happened at Merco, but whatever European funds can be utilised for that purpose, we'll use them.
We now move to Leader of Plaid Cymru, Leanne Wood.
Diolch, Llywydd. Last week, First Minister, you seemed confused about the difference in funding between Wales and Scotland and Plaid Cymru's demand for equality for Wales. Now, you questioned the rationale behind our figure of £1.2 billion extra if Wales was funded on the basis of parity with Scotland. Now, Holtham showed that Scotland was funded at 121% per capita of the England level. Holtham also showed that Wales was funded at 112% per capita. The basis for Plaid Cymru's figure of £1.2 billion extra is based on an increase of per capita funding for Wales to Scottish levels for services that are devolved to Wales. Now, I've written to explain this to you in full. Do you now understand the point? And if you do you support this basic principle of parity of funding with Scotland?
Well, first of all, just to remind the Leader of Plaid Cymru, her party supported the establishment of the Holtham Commission and supported the findings of the Holtham Commission. The Holtham Commission showed that Wales is underfunded to the tune of £300 million. Now, this figure of £1.2 billion is still not explained, either within this chamber or to the people of Wales. She and I will agree that Wales is underfunded. When she produces figures that support her, well, I look forward to the letter. I haven't seen it yet, but I'll study the letter when it arrives. We operate on the basis that Wales is underfunded to the tune of £300 million. That is something that her party has always supported until this figure of £1.2 billion came out of thin air as far as we can see. But in fairness to her, I'll wait to see what the letter says and I'll study it in more detail.
First Minister, you know full well that the vow that was given to people in Scotland ahead of the referendum has completely changed the game. While you were standing shoulder to shoulder with the Conservatives in the No campaign in Scotland, you were agreeing to the locking in of Wales's financial disadvantage. So let's be clear, First Minister, when you talk of parity with Scotland, you don't actually mean it at all, do you? But let's look at this on your terms. I find it telling that you quote a figure of £300 million shortfall estimated in the first Holtham report. The second Holtham report estimated a gap of a minimum of £400 million. Can you tell us why you set your sights so low by quoting the lowest Holtham figure possible?
It really is for Wales v Scotland, isn't it? It worked for the SNP to try and say that Labour was standing with the Conservatives in the referendum, but see if it works in Wales. That's the way that Plaid Cymru operate. I have to say to her, once again, she has not produced any evidence to support £1.2 billion. She supported, and her party supported, the Holtham Commission, its establishment, and its findings. And I have to say, once again, to the Leader of Plaid Cymru, her party's position is to see the ending of any money being transferred from Whitehall or Westminster to Wales. She is either in favour of independence and financial independence, or she is in favour of more money from Whitehall. If she is in favour of the latter, I would agree with her. We want to see that Wales is funded fairly. What we don't want to see is no funding coming to Wales at all, which is her party's logical policy.
You know full well that we want Wales to become an independent country. We also want to end Wales's financial independence. How can we do that with one hand tied behind our back and a government that won't fight for the best option for Wales? Now, next week, First Minister, we can expect the Chancellor to confirm his austerity agenda during the autumn statement. More pain is coming to Wales in the form of cuts to public services. Now, I'm sure that you won't miss an opportunity to attack the Coalition's plans. But how can you do that whilst refusing to even try to win a fair funding arrangement based on Wales being treated equally with Scotland? You won't join me in working to secure an additional £1.2 billion for Welsh public services and for our economy. So will you tell us this afternoon what estimate your government has made of Wales's funding shortfall in comparison to Scotland? Have you even bothered to try working that out?
What we haven't done is write it down on a piece of paper and wave it in the air as if it was gospel. I have to say, the way her party does these things, produce a figure from thin air, don't back it up, and then suggest that it's a more robust figure than the commission that they themselves supported in the first place. You know, that's where they are at the moment. We have fought long and hard for fair funding for Wales. We've done it on the basis of evidence, not on the basis of fantasy, which is where she has come from. And I come back, and she has been honest. She has been honest with the people in this chamber and the people of Wales when she says she wants independence. Let her go out and tell the people of Wales that. Let her tell the people of Wales what she actually wants is not a single penny to come from Westminster to the people of Wales. Or is she really saying, to the astonishment of the people of Wales, she wants to be independent, but she still wants England's money, which is what she's saying at the moment.
It's not our money, but England's money.
Thank you. There seem to be a rather a number of leaders of Plaid Cymru there at the moment. Order. Leanne Wood has finished her questions. We now move to the Leader of the Welsh Liberal Democrats, Kirsty Williams.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. First Minister, I'm sure we would all very much indeed welcome the devolution of the Wales and Borders franchise. In 2003, the Labour government in Westminster awarded the current franchise with absolutely no provision for more passengers. Given your comments earlier this afternoon, will you confirm that the Welsh Government will provide for a target for passenger growth for the next franchise, and could you give us an indication what you want that target to be?
Well, that work is ongoing. We expect there to be growth. We will have a target to increase passenger growth, because of course it'll be that will be part of the calculation of what the fares should look like in the future. We know that growth has been substantial over the past 10 years, and we will produce those figures, passenger estimates in due course.
The diesel pacer trains that serve our busiest rail routes will become illegal by 2020 because of accessibility issues. What planning will your government undertake to make sure that there are necessary replacements for those trains, taking into consideration that the Valleys line will be well on the way to being electrified by that time?
Yes, of course. I mean, that's part of the discussions that will occur around the franchising process. As part of that, we will need to specify what rolling stock should be made available. The last thing we would all want to see, for example, is that if we see electrification, the rolling stock is ancient rolling stock running on the track, and that's something we're very much aware of.
Just last week, your Transport Minister said, and I quote, "I just hope that I have rail devolved as soon as possible so that we can actually get on with doing a good job on our own services." Now that her wishes have been granted, you will have the tools to tackle poor quality rolling stock, which has forced 2 apologies from Arriva Trains Wales in just the last month, and provide rolling stock to make good on your promises about increased services on the Vale of Glamorgan line and on the Cambrian line and on the Ebble Vale line. So will you commit today to publishing a rolling stock strategy in conjunction with the next franchise to maximise the potential benefits that both electrification and devolution of the franchise can bring to our country?
Absolutely. Now we have the tools to do this, it'll be far easier to specify the quality of the rolling stock, the nature of the rolling stock, the nature of the services, of course, and what the overall fare structure should look like. As I say to the leader of the Liberal Democrats, what we would not want to see is for there to be modernisation of the track, but then not see a concurrent modernisation of the rolling stock. The two things have to run together.
We now move back to questions on the paper, and it's question 3, David Rees.
Okay, will the First Minister make a statement on what the Welsh Government is doing to improve the health services in Wales?
Indeed. We ensure the improvement of healthcare services through the planning and delivery framework, and of course we're investing an extra £425 million over the next 2 years in the NHS to support this work.
Well, thank you for that answer, First Minister. But over recent weeks, in fact months, we have seen an attack from the UK government ministers on the Welsh NHS. And I have no doubt this attack will continue as we go up to the general election, as they try to deflect the attention away from the abysmal work in the NHS in England. Now, as part of their attack, the consideration of a review by the OECD into the NHS across the UK was highlighted. Can you provide an update on the progress being made with regard to that review?
Well, we have no problem with the OECD review. The difficulty we have is that we will not accept a scenario where the Department of Health feels that it should be able to leak selectively from the OECD review ahead of the general election, which is exactly where they want to be. But you don't have to take my word for it. Let me quote to the member a letter sent by Jim Wells, MLA, who is the Minister for Health, Social Services and Public Safety in the Northern Ireland Executive. He writes the letter on behalf of all the devolved ministers, and he says, whilst we all support the review, we have to record that we have some concerns about the possibility of extracts from the work being referenced in advance of publication of the work. This should be an unusual departure from normal practice. It is not one we could support. Officials from each of the devolved administrations had previously made this clear in the first meeting of the review steering group held in early September, that is this year. Accordingly, we would be grateful for confirmation that neither you, that is Jeremy Hunt, nor your ministerial colleagues in Whitehall would intend to proceed on this basis. We have not yet had a response.
Darren Miller.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. First Minister, one thing which certainly needs to improve as far as NHS performance in Wales is concerned are referral to treatment times and indeed your understanding of them. It is a disgrace, frankly, that you are 7 times more likely, if you are a Welsh patient, to wait more than 6 months for treatment than if you are a patient from England. Now, you have consistently said in recent media interviews and appearances that the clock starts ticking at a different point in terms of referral to treatment and the way that it's recorded in Wales versus England, but that is not true. The clock starts ticking in terms of the record from the time of a referral from a GP to treatment in both England and Wales, and you're still 7 times less likely to have your treatment after 6 months than you are in England. Will you apologise for misleading the Welsh public?
Not at all. That is the situation as they have described it themselves. And I have to say to the member, given the traumas that his party is experiencing with the NHS in England, he is not in the best position to raise help at the moment. We have only just heard in this chamber the position of Northern Ireland, Scotland and Wales, where they wish to ensure that the Department of Health does not act in a dishonest way
7 times more likely
information to the press ahead of a general election for their own petty party political gain. And that is a view not just held by us in Wales, but by Northern Ireland and Scotland as well.
Comments I shall write to you.
Helen Jones.
First Minister, a committee of this Assembly has been critical today of mental health services for children and young people in Wales. Are you confident that the funding allocated by your government for mental health services for young people to the health boards is being spent on these services? And if you're not confident on this point, will you ask those health boards to report back to you and to this Assembly on their expenditure of the funding that needs to be spent on services for young people?
Well, first of all, we will, of course, be responding to the committee as soon as possible. Secondly, the Minister has asked Dame Sue Bailey, who is a child psychiatrist and a former president of the Royal College of Psychiatrists, to ensure that she carries on with a review to modernise and reconfigure the service for the future, but there will be a further response in due time.
Kirsty Williams.
First Minister, the latest figures regarding performance against waiting time targets at the end of September of this year showed that Powys Local Health Board alone was the only local health board to actually meet the Welsh Government's targets, and I congratulate them in doing that. However, many of my constituents still feel that 26 or 36 weeks is still an incredibly long time to wait for surgery when they are in pain. What plans does your government have to reduce those waiting times for local health boards that are meeting your targets?
Well, I mean, as I already mentioned earlier on in my answer, we've put an extra £425 million into the Welsh NHS over the next 2 years. We expect that, of course, to have a positive effect, whilst, of course, recognising that increasing demand means that there will be a further need in the future to identify new resources for the NHS in order to keep up with that demand. It's important, of course, as well, that patients in Powys are able to access health services in England. I do not, this is not her party's view, I know, but I do not accept the view put forward by the Conservative Party that Welsh patients are refugees in the English NHS. It's not that long ago that the party opposite fought an entire election demanding that Welsh patients should be able to access English hospitals. And then we have Jeremy Hunt saying that they are all indeed refugees. An appalling comment made by a Conservative, but it does give us an idea of what the political games are that are being played between now and next May.
Question 4, Joyce Watson.
What is the Welsh Government doing to deal with violence committed against women?
Could I thank the member for her question? Could I thank her personally, actually, for the immense effort she's put in to this area of work, an exceptionally important area of work, and she's been tireless in her efforts to deal with domestic violence. Can I say we are progressing an ambitious programme of work in this area. The bill, of course, itself is a key part of that. The debate, of course, will take place this afternoon, and I'm sure the Minister will have more to say on the issue in the course of that debate.
Thank you for that, First Minister. And I also want to recognise the Wales-wide support for the White Ribbon campaign. And today is International Day to End Violence Against Women and Children. And I want to particularly thank the Scarlets rugby team, because they actually did wear white ribbons on their shirts last Friday and dedicate the match towards raising funds to end violence against women and children in Llanelli. And I also want to recognise the South Wales Fire and Rescue Service for becoming the first in the world to get the white ribbon status as a fire service. And I think that that is incredibly important. And of course, I welcome all the legislation and look forward to discussing the gender-based violence, domestic abuse and sexual violence Wales Bill later on. But I do have to recognise, Minister, that because of budget cuts from Westminster, the UK's refuge network is under tremendous strain. Mothers are fleeing violence and they are struggling to get legal aid. And specialist prosecutors for rape cases have been cut back and domestic violence courts are closing. So could I ask you, First Minister, that you will do all that you can through your partners in local government to secure that the networks that offer women's safety services in Wales are protected?
Could I thank the member for the question? In terms of the Fire and Rescue Authority, she, of course, I think was at the event this morning, celebrating that accreditation. The point about the legal system is a more than fair point, because the criminal legal system is being destroyed systematically. Representation is not available to people who need it. Money is not being made available for prosecutions, and my great fear is that we will see fewer and fewer successful prosecutions in the future as the court system gets slower and slower. It is inevitable that that will happen over the next few years, given the budget cuts in legal aid that we have seen. Perhaps the member might be interested in knowing what government is doing. We are projecting white ribbons onto the Pierhead building and Caerphilly Castle this evening. And there are a number of events that will take place at the Welsh Government offices in the court during the course of the day to further raise awareness across the organisation. But she's right to say, in these days of austerity, it can be quite a challenge to make sure that those who most need support get it.
Jonathan Saunders.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. First Minister, last year, 1.2 million women in England and Wales suffered domestic abuse. In October, the Minister for Public Services gave the Communities, Equalities and Local Government Committee assurances that you and he had discussed about amending the Gender-Based Violence, Domestic Abuse and Sexual Violence Wales Bill to recognise the disproportionate impact that gender-based violence has on women and girls. How have these conversations sort of gone forward, and how will that lead to a dramatic difference in terms of amendments to stage 2 of this bill?
I think the member will be pleased by what the Minister has to say this afternoon, and perhaps I leave it to him to take that forward as part of the debate. I'm sure she'll want to express a view then as well.
First Minister, I agree with you entirely about your comments on legal aid, but I wonder if you would, on White Ribbon Day, join with me in congratulating Theresa May in refusing entry to the UK last week to Julian Blanc, the so-called seduction expert and dating guru, who actually advocates sexual violence and psychological abuse as techniques in coercing and controlling women.
Absolutely. I could not agree more with the member. There is a fine line to be drawn between freedom of speech and incitement to violence. And on that occasion, the line was firmly drawn on the right side, namely that the influence of this person would be extremely malevolent, not just on society, but on the country as a whole. And I very much welcome the decision that was taken, and I fully support her view upon that.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. First Minister, returning to the gender-based violence bill, and I do endorse what Jocelyn Davis has just said and yourself. You'll know that the committee was particularly concerned because the bill did not contain much in terms of education. And I accept that there was a curriculum review, but there was a particular approach to education, a whole school approach, which the committee felt should be in the bill. I know we'll be debating later on, but does the government prepare to give any ground in that regard?
Yes, in the bill itself, consideration is certainly given to a whole school approach to addressing these issues, and also the introduction of a national training framework with regard to that. I'm sure the Minister will expand on that in the course of the afternoon.
And before we move to question 5, can I remind members to be a little bit more concise when asking questions, please? John Griffiths.
Will the First Minister set out the next steps to take forward the metro system for integrated transport in Wales?
Yes, we are developing with the City Region Board a number of different delivery options for the next stages, and the recently agreed funding deal for modernising the Valley Lines is vital to our ambitions.
Would you agree, First Minister, that the metro system is transformative, would be transformative for Wales economically, socially and environmentally, and it must be progressed as quickly as possible? And to that end, do you agree that early Welsh Government access to borrowing powers should be available for the metro system?
Well, of course, the situation at the moment is that early access is only available for the M4. Whether that's right or not, of course, that is what's being decided in Westminster. But nevertheless, we want to make sure that we consider the appropriateness and availability of borrowing powers when developing the financial strategy for delivery.
Byron Davies? No? Lindsay Whittle?
Well, First Minister, what are the most recent estimates you have for the amount of capital spend your government is willing to invest in the South East Metro? And can you promise that your plans for a second M4 have not affected that amount, please?
No, the two things are entirely separate. The two things can be delivered together. I mean, one thing I have to explain, well, to say to members, of course, is that the M4 is not a project that takes money out of existing capital schemes, nor indeed the South Wales Metro. And as the Minister said on many occasions in the past, it is not the case that the entire sum available for borrowing will be used for the M4. There will be money available for other projects as well. But of course, we know that the problem around the M4 is not going to go away, and getting to a position where there is support for a relief road will be vital for the economy of South Wales.
Question 6, Aled Roberts.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. What is the Welsh Government doing to improve current waiting times for chronic pain management in North Wales?
The Betsy Cadwaladr University Health Board is continuing to work on both short and longer term actions to put these services on a sustainable basis.
I accept that. Do you as a government feel that it is sufficient that the Chief Executive has written to me saying that the waiting times in August were over a year, but by September, or rather October, the situation had deteriorated to 78 weeks wait for chronic pain treatment in Ysbyty Maelor Wrexham? Now, I've looked at these improvement plans from the Health Board, but they don't appear on their website. Will you as a government therefore ensure that those plans are published so that we as Assembly members can scrutinise their work?
Well, that is unacceptable. Nobody could defend those figures. There are plans, as he's already mentioned, to improve those figures substantially. I will ask the Minister to write to you with the required details. It's extremely important that the scheme that is available is made public, and that the Minister will ensure that that scheme will be available to you as a member.
So, First Minister, the Betsy Cadwaladr Health Board saw 726 patients waiting over 12 hours in A&E during the month of October. It was the worst performing health board in that respect in Wales. What action is your government taking to address this problem in North Wales and to ensure that patients are treated as quickly as possible in order to minimise both the pain and the discomfort that must be caused by waiting that long?
Well, first of all, the member seems to be under the impression that people actually wait 12 hours to see somebody. That isn't the case. That is the total wait in A&E. So during that time, they will have been triaged, and during that time, they will have been treated. For many patients, of course, it is better for them to remain in hospital for just over 12 hours, in A&E rather, for just over 12 hours, and be discharged rather than be admitted for up to 3 days. And that is the difficult balance that has to be struck by medical practitioners. So it's very difficult, of course, to look at the times people wait in A&E, I'm doing it myself now, the times people spend in A&E, given the fact that their individual circumstances may mean that it is better for them to remain there and be treated and then be discharged rather than be kept in hospital for a few more days.
Alan Fred-Jones?
Thank you very much. Waiting times do cause serious concerns in North Wales, and the Chief Executive of the Welsh Health Service told the Public Accounts Committee that these waiting times were a cause of concern for him. Now, in Ysbyty Gwynedd at present, the waiting time following referral for colonoscopy is 36 weeks. Is that acceptable?
Well, this question is about chronic pain. No, it's about waiting times. Well, anyway, what's important, of course, is that the board itself ensures that there are sufficient resources available so that people can be given a colonoscopy in a shorter period of time. And so I'll ask the Minister to write to you with more details about how the board is dealing with this.
Presiding Officer, what plans does the First Minister have to increase employment opportunities in Cardiff North?
Well, we're all committed, of course, to delivering sustainable employment in all of Cardiff. We do this by working with the city region, with the Central Cardiff Enterprise Zone, which I appreciate is not in the member's constituency, to stimulate job creation through new investment opportunities.
I thank the First Minister for that response. Does the First Minister agree that it's a tribute to the skills of the labour force in Cardiff North and in South Wales that the prestigious International Baccalaureate organisation based in Cardiff Gate in Pomprennau, in my constituency of Cardiff North, decided to leave Cardiff North to go overseas? That happened a few years ago, but then was obliged to change its mind and has now taken a 10-year lease on a new building in Cardiff Gate, and says 300 jobs are safeguarded and there may be future jobs.
Yes, I declare an interest here that my wife once worked for the IB when they were in Cardiff South and Penarth, in St Mellons, and the member is absolutely right to say that they had given thought to moving abroad. It's clear that the quality of the workforce available in the constituency could not be matched elsewhere, and I'm very, very happy that, of course, they have now committed in the long term to remain in Cardiff North.
George Davis?
Thank you, Presiding Officer. First Minister, the Corriton line, which is also known as the City Line, doesn't fall part of the valleys areas defined by Network Rail. Are you of the mind that this line will also benefit from the electrification process that will be ongoing in the valleys area? Because obviously the Vale Little Morgan line is to be electrified. So will the Corriton line also fall under the electrification scheme?
It's part of the Metro. No question about that, and will be dealt with as if it was part of the wider Metro network. There's no suggestion that somehow it will be excluded from the plans that we have.
Leanne Wood.
First Minister, the so-called economic recovery was undermined when the Welsh Retail Consortium reported large footfall declines on our high streets recently. In October, we saw the biggest decline since February. Now, in Wales, we've had 3 business rate reviews and little action. The Party of Wales wants to see action, and we've proposed taking businesses with a rateable value of less than £10,000 out of the rate system altogether. That would deliver a much-needed boost to 70,000 Welsh small to medium-sized businesses that form the backbone of the Welsh economy. And I'm sure you'd agree with me that those businesses could do with help as soon as possible. First Minister, if your government does not support Plaid Cymru's policy on this, can you please explain why?
Well, first of all, I'd like to know how much it would cost, and secondly, where that money would come from. That has not been explained to us. If she's suggesting that there should be increases in business rates on larger businesses, that would cause great problems with regard to some of our bigger employers. If we look, for example, at employers like Tata, they're already wrestling with enormously high energy costs as compared to some of the other countries that they produce in. So I'd be very reluctant to do that. But as the leader of Plaid Cymru well knows, business rates have not yet been fully devolved. So what they may want to do in the future is not yet within the control of the Welsh Government. We expect that to be the case in in April of next year, and the Minister in any event has gone through a review process to look at business rates to provide the most attractive business environment possible for Wales. But as I say, it's perfectly right, of course, to come forward with a policy, but we do not need to understand what it would cost and where the money would come from.
Question 8, Sandy Movies.
Presiding Officer, First Minister, will you provide an update on the response to the call for a voice for Wales on the Home Office independent panel inquiry into child sexual abuse?
We think there should be a voice for Wales. The Minister, I know, raised this matter with Baroness Randerson last week, and we'll continue to make every effort to ensure that its membership and work is representative of Wales. It is not at the moment.
Thank you for that. It would be very sad that that indication seemed to be that the Home Office will reject calls by Gwenda Thomas, the former Social Services Minister, for a Welsh nominee. But it's not a matter which should be ignored or taken lightly. There are two very important points I'd like to make. North Wales has been at the centre of child abuse allegations for 20 years or more via Waterhouse and now Operation Paliao. And Wales has its own social services and safeguarding children procedures. So First Minister, how can you ensure that Wales will have a voice on the inquiry? Because it is likely that issues of relevance to Wales may emerge and that the Home Office should urgently rethink this.
The Home Office of all government departments is the one that is the most ignorant of devolution. This is just one example of it. There are many, many others where they really have no idea of the different structures that exist in Wales. The difficulty is, of course, is that as a result of this review process, there may be recommendations that would affect devolved services. Now, are we to take notice of that? And there's no reason why we shouldn't, of course, but are we to take full notice of that, given the fact that we have no representative on the review body? I think the Home Office need to be sent a map, show them where Wales is, and understand that in reality, if this is to be a process for the whole of England and Wales together as two nations, then there has to be a Welsh representative on the body.
Mohammed Ashgar.
Presiding Officer, First Minister, the independent inquiry set up to consider whether public bodies and other institutions failed in their duty of care to protect children from sexual abuse represent a diverse range of experience, including social care, academia, law enforcement, health, media, the voluntary sector, and those with experience of child sexual abuse. Does the First Minister agree that what matters now is that the panel gets on with its work and report as soon as possible to ensure we have proper safeguards of protection for our children in the future?
There are people in Wales with that expertise. That's the whole point. I mean, the member seems to suggest that somehow these people aren't available in Wales. They are. I mean, the review itself has had a very difficult history, as we know, but if this is to be an England and Wales review, there needs to be representation from Wales as part of it. Otherwise, of course, what credibility can it have if it does not take into account the separate structures and safeguards and legislation that we have in Wales? It just won't fit. So it's absolutely crucial there's somebody there who is representing Welsh interests in what is meant to be a two-nation review.
Bethan Jenkins.
First Minister, I agree with Sandy Mews's comment and Gwenda Thomas's comments last week that Wales needs a clear voice on that inquiry panel, particularly as there are inherently Welsh interests here. For example, the Welsh language. If anyone appears who wants to provide evidence, they want to feel comfortable in doing so. So what discussions and negotiations have you had with the government on specific people who don't have a conflict of interest, as has happened where the situation as currently stands in England, so that we can get a strong voice for Wales on this panel?
Well, first of all, of course, we must ensure that there is an agreement that there is a person from Wales on the panel. I don't believe that the Wales office has any kind of objection to that, to be quite fair to them. But there is a problem with the Home Office, because this appears quite often these days. And it is important that if there is a review where two nations are part of that review, that somebody from the other nation is represented there. This hasn't happened because of the fact that we just want somebody from Wales on it, but it's important from the point of view of the legislation, the different structure. If recommendations are made, will they fit as regards the situation in Wales, and to ensure that this is a purposeful review which is comprehensive, and that it's extremely important that we have somebody from Wales on the panel itself.
may be aware, First Minister, a statement of opinion I have raised on this issue has now received support from Plaid Cymru, Liberal Democrat, Conservative and Labour members. This is not a party political matter. I do believe that this is something we can all agree on. I understand also that a decision on whether to hold a separate national inquiry into historic child sexual abuse in Scotland is to be made by the end of the year by the Scottish Parliament. First Minister, what can the Welsh Government do to continue to make the case for a Welsh representative on the Home Office inquiry?
I think the member is right. It isn't a party political issue. It is something that all members in this chamber, I'm sure, will, well, most members in this chamber, I'm sure, will appreciate. We must get away from this idea that if there is a body or there is a review or a panel that is set up to cover England and Wales, that you can ignore Wales as part of that review. Well, that is not appropriate in the now or ever, in fact, but particularly now. It is absolutely crucial that there is somebody who is part of the process, who understands Welsh circumstances, understands Welsh structures, and understands Welsh legislation. Otherwise, there is a real danger. The recommendations, which I'm sure members would want, certainly in principle, to support, we haven't seen them yet, of course, but it's difficult. I mean, we wouldn't reject them simply because they're recommendations that have come from a panel we didn't particularly like the look of. But what the real danger is the recommendations don't fit in Wales. And that is a problem the Home Office keep on failing to understand in this and other issues.
Thank you, First Minister. We now move to item 2, which is a business statement.